Alright, let's talk about Honkai Star Rail 2.1. I've been hearing a lot of mixed feelings about this second part of Penacony's story, that it was either amazing or it kinda sucked. While 2.0 was an intro to Penacony and relied on mystery and introducing many new elements, 2.1 is more about developing the character stories and trying to expand on the characters while also continuing the plot a bunch. Adventuring was the main focus of 2.1, even though we got like 4 trailers for Acheron trying to sell her as hard as possible, and some of these were bangers too. At this point, she kind of seemed like the main character of the game if you don't know much about it. If she doesn't beat Seely's banner, I don't think anyone will. I had mixed feelings on the update as a whole, but let's just jump into it. Also, this is obviously going to be spoiling pretty much everything that happened so far, so you've been warned. First, let's talk about the overall plot and characters. 2.0 introduced a ton of characters, areas, and mysteries, and 2.1 begins to unravel some of them. The main story reveals are that Adventuring was actually plotting to be killed in the dream in some giant gamble. Acheron is actually a Nihility Emanator masquerading as a Galaxy Ranger. Gallagher is actually a serial killer, and he's a Frankenstein's monster patchwork of missing people that he's killed. Sam is apparently Firefly, and this hot mom Jade is coming to Penacony. Let's break down all of these, starting with Adventuring's plot. While I didn't really like Adventuring in the previous update, was this story enough to redeem him to me? Overall, I think they did a pretty good job fleshing out his story. He's kind of a grimy, smarmy, douchey kind of guy you'd never actually trust in real life, but they did the classic Hollywood technique of sad backstory equals good guy. Oh, you don't really like this guy? Oh, really? Well, their parents died when they were a baby. They worked in a coal mine since they were 5 years old with only one arm and one leg. They have 3 forms of cancer by the age of 10. He never had any running water. No Wi-Fi, no ad block, no bitches, no hair. Feel bad about yourself now? You didn't like this guy? You're a horrible person. And, well, this technique, it worked a bit. They got me. His plan was super convoluted, but the gist was basically he wanted to die in the dream world to prove it can happen while also using it to cause the IPC to invade Penacony under the pretense they killed him, because when you die in the dream, you die for real, and it can be confusing at first, but I think as they go until the final reveal, his story gets really fleshed out and he becomes one of the best characters in 2.1. One of the best scenes was actually him and Sunday just talking with Dr. Ratio hanging out in the background, which was actually dramatic enough to be pretty interesting. He tricked Sunday, but then it turns out he was tricked by Sunday and he was double-crossed, but then he wanted to be tricked all along and was playing 4D chess and he was 10 moves ahead. They did a lot of backstory interweaving with the present, and although I didn't really like him by the end, it at least softened my heart for him a little bit. Next, let's talk about Acheron's story in 2.1. She was the star of the show for advertisement, but isn't really as prevalent as Adventuring in the story so far. She was off-screen to Duke Inferno, saying that to honor him, she'll reveal her secret and draw her Nippon steel, which apparently I do for literally every trash mob I ever fight in the game now. Like seriously, I send these poor pigs to oblivion for no reason. During the story, there was this amazing part between Acheron and Weld, which all of us Honkai 3rd fans loved. Except I haven't played Honkai 3rd and don't know any of the lore, so the entire thing was just... Acheron overall remains mysterious until the end, where she shows off her Nihility Emanator powers and sends Adventuring to the void with one strike, and probably one of the best cutscenes of the entire game. Next, we have Gallagher, and he's a really strange one. Overall, he was a fairly innocuous and kind of seemingly NPC kind of guy. The bar lady actually has a way more over-designed look than him, and she isn't even playable. There were hints throughout that he was actually more than he seemed, like when you talk to the Bloodhound member guarding the terrace, and he doesn't know Gallagher's name. But the guy's standing like legit 6 feet from him, and you can see Gallagher in the background, and he's accidentally guarding him. So at the time, I just thought he was like stoned or something. I didn't really understand that was actually supposed to be a hint. I didn't even know what was going on. Other hints are like that he lies all the time. One example is when he says he's 13 years old, just barely above the average age of the players of this game. The biggest reveal he was evil though was when he took us to the bar and talked for 15 minutes about nothing and I almost fell asleep. Oh, and I mean, he also killed like 52 people and took their personality and physical traits, creating some amalgamation of a human and controlled means to kill people and attacked Sunday at the end. So there's also that, I guess. His story overall makes me interested to see where it'll go in 2.2 since it was so abrupt at the end. Now let's talk about Sam and Firefly. Firefly is one of the most aight characters in the game, and Sam is one of the most badass. People spoiled this twist probably like 10 times to me, but everyone in my chat was just saying every character was Sam and no way emotes being spammed, so I didn't really believe it. Hell, it could have been Paimon for all I knew. The reveal is definitely cool to see and will probably be a really big part of 2.2, so I'm excited to see what happens with that as well. Sparkle ended up not doing anything, but that works for their lore because she says she always wants to be more of a background character and not in the spotlight. But apparently she has weapons of mass destruction? Sunday did this whole anti-lion technique on Aventurine, and their sequence together was really good, but then he got bought by Gallagher at the end. Robin is still dead, but rollable in 2.2, so unless we're pulling a corpse, maybe she's actually okay? I don't know, I guess we'll find out. There was some other character though. I don't quite remember their name. I feel like they were introduced to the game in 2.0, but I just can't seem to remember what exactly it was. Who were they? What did they look like? Oh well, if I can't remember anything about them, they must not be really important. Now, even though all this character development and plot was good, let's talk about the next part, which I've heard some complaints about. The yappening. Characters were talking way more than in version 2.0. On the one hand, that's good because they can add a lot of characterization, but on the other, a lot of it seemed kind of pointless and contrived. One example would be Gallagher bringing us to the bar. That whole scene took forever to learn any information, although I think it's mostly to try and set up the bar event that we then got. Another one is Aventurine asking random street people about death when he only has like 17 hours left to live due to Ligma. It just felt like kind of a waste of time to me until we met Sparkle. Also, I'm sure a lot of non-Honkai third players were just confused throughout Acheron and Wilt's dialogue. The POV switching was well done overall, and it was cool to try different characters, but sometimes it felt like you wanted to see what was next and suddenly you have to play a different route before you get to see what happens. I do feel as a whole, 2.1 wasn't as well done as 2.0, but usually the beginning of a story is better at getting you hooked, while the middle has the meat and needs to explain everything. A lot of the early and middle portions of 2.1 feel a bit slow, and not much is happening, but near the end, it suddenly all comes at you full speed and makes you excited to see the next part of the story, which I definitely don't feel Belobog or the Luofu would have been able to do if the stories had been portioned out like 2.0, 2.1. Near the end, they also had multiple cutscenes, which felt like some of the best yet, which is surprising since they're happening only halfway through the Penacony story, and we already had a really big boss battle. Overall, I felt like the characters became really fleshed out and a lot was added. There's still a lot of mysteries. We aren't sure what's going to happen next, like is the IPC just going to invade Penacony? What's going on with Firefly? Are we gonna fight Gallagher? What about Robin and Boothill and Sparkle? Is Sunday dead? Is Ted Cruz the Zodiac Killer? Find out next time on Honkai Star Rail. Thanks a bunch for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to the channel. See you next time.